Hey everybody, Mrs. Norris here, and I am your child's 7th grade computer science teacher for the 2020-2021 school year. So before I get started with my presentation, I did want to walk you through the homepage that you're looking at this evening. On the left-hand side, there is a copy of the presentation that I'm going to go through if you would like to follow along as I move through it, or you can just watch the video. On the right-hand side is this video that you are currently watching. If you had issues, maybe you clicked on the here button and that took you into YouTube where you can watch this directly on YouTube. And underneath these two things, we have our course documents module where you can find some of the important documents for our class. I'll talk about that one a little bit later. Let's just move into our presentation, shall we? I'm going to go ahead and get rid of myself, and I'm going to get to our presentation. And welcome. A little bit about me is I have been teaching for 19 years. I graduated from Cal State Long Beach. I have a multiple subject teaching credential with a visual and performing arts emphasis. I also have a social sciences supplemental that I use to teach 8th grade U.S. history here at Hamilton. Like I said, I am starting my 19th year here with Long Beach Unified, and I've taught many different classes during those 19 years. I've taught ELA, I taught an art class, I taught 7th grade history, and I currently teach 8th grade history and this computer science course. So, a little bit about this course and our goals. My main goal is for your child to know that there's more to being in front of a screen than just being on social media. I want them to understand that if they know how to use productivity and collaboration tools like Google Docs, like Google Sheets, like slides, then you're more marketable in the workforce. Having those skills is going to make an employer look more towards them than maybe somebody else competing for the same job who doesn't have those skills. Knowing how to type quickly. So, one of the first things you do when you walk into this class is 10 minutes of keyboarding practice. So, knowing how to type quickly and efficiently is going to make it easier to produce work for home and school. And it's going to also make them more marketable in the workforce. Again, that situation where if they are up for a job compared to somebody else who doesn't have these skills, they'll be looked at a little bit more closely. Also, understanding basic coding and 3D design steps is going to open them up to fields of study that they might have never imagined. So, this is a Project Lead the Way course. It will lead them into the robotics course for next year, where they will be using a lot of coding that we learn about in this class. So, it's a gateway into that robotics course when they are in 8th grade. So the things that we learn are keyboarding and coding, Google Apps. We do talk some about digital citizenship, and if you are going to use your screen mostly for social media, how to act appropriately when you do so. They do some collaboration activities. We do use 3D software. Currently, we're using Tinkercad. There'll be some projects that will require research. They'll learn shortcuts along the way, keyboarding shortcuts, and some basic computer terms, and then also how to navigate the internet quickly and efficiently. There'll be some file sharing and collaborating, some word processing, and then obviously presentation software with Google Slides. My grading is pretty simple. It's a classwork only class. So classwork is 80% of your course. Sometimes there will be a long-term project or something that takes longer than 1 or 2 days, and that will be 20%. But for the most part, what you're going to find is that the work in here is classwork. Sorry about that. As you can see at the top of the screen there, it says assignments are accepted up to 2 weeks after their due date for full credit. Really, that's a little bit different for this class than, say, my history class. The assignments are really more done at your own pace. Some students gather the information really quickly. Some of them need a little bit of extra time. So rather than have close dates, I have still strictly due dates, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about the class on Canvas. When you are looking at your student's grade, you're going to notice a couple of things. You might see a late button under status, and you might see a missing button. So let's look at the late button. So if you see the late marker under status next to an assignment, just understand that there are no points taken away for that late assignment. I just want the assignment turned in. I have very strict guidelines. Almost all of the assignments, you have to score 100% to be able to move on to the next assignment, because I want to know that you can master that task before you move on to something new. So you may turn it in late, but again, it doesn't mean that you're going to get points off. It just means that you just turned it in past the due date. That's all. If something is marked missing, that's probably because the assignment due date came up, but I'm still accepting. So I will accept those assignments pretty much until the end of the school year. But if you're still working on lesson 1.1 in June, there was a bigger problem going on. Okay. So students, assignments don't have close dates, which means they're always going to be open until the end of the school year. And once that assignment has been submitted, it'll be marked late and then it will be graded. So again, missing doesn't mean that I'm not going to take it. It just means that your student is going to have to catch up because that assignment hasn't been submitted yet. So again, for this class, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in a moment, but for this class, an assignment, you cannot move to the next one until you've mastered the first one. So that missing tag is just letting you know, hey, you haven't done this one yet, and you can't move on until you do. Okay. So again, as it says here, a new module assignment isn't going to open until you've mastered at 100%. The class expectations, because it is a technology course, we're dealing with a lot of expensive equipment. Sometimes the equipment has sharp edges if we're moving into some of our machine work that we're doing later. So I need you to make sure, or I need my students to make sure they're always being respectful, that they're being responsible and safe, and that they are present. Oops. They're engaged. They're being meaningful with the words that they use, and they're being positive. And when I am not here, those rules apply when there is a guest teacher, which is going to move me into classroom management. I work by the 3 strikes rule. You're going to get a verbal warning. If the verbal warning doesn't work, maybe I'm going to move you somewhere in the classroom. And if that doesn't work, then I may remove you from the class altogether and away from your computer. You may lose computer time until I can either speak with a parent or guardian, or maybe have a conversation with administration present. But I do try to deal with as many issues as I can in the classroom and not deal with them in a way that involves administration. I'd rather be able to come up with a plan with myself and the student and the family to make sure that the student is successful, because that is my only goal, is that your student is successful. If you do have any questions for me throughout the year, if you haven't done so already, I definitely suggest that you download the parent and student Canvas apps. Once you get those installed, or even if you are using a desktop computer, when you're in Canvas, if you message me in the inbox, I do my very best to keep on top of those. So that would be the best way to communicate with me. So before I close out this presentation, I do want to talk a little bit about the class a little bit more. When the students come to the homepage, the Canvas homepage for my class, they're going to see a calendar much like what you have in front of you. So every day we practice our typing, a little bit of actual lessons on typing.com, and then a little bit of fun practice on Nitro Type. There are going to be assignments listed that were due the week prior, so assignments that I were assigned the week prior. These assignments are the ones that are probably going to have to be finished before the new assignments for the week can get started. So again, like I said, most of the assignments you have to master the first one before you can move on to the second one. So for example, this Express course lesson 1, the student has to get a 100% on that activity before they can move on to Angry Birds lesson 2. So again, the due date just means, Have that done by Friday, and then by Friday, you're ready to move on the next week with the next new assignment. So again, no close dates like there are in my history class, just due dates to keep students on top of what assignments need to get finished. It's very much an at your own pace. So when you come into my class, one student might be working on a coding activity while another student is working on a Google productivity tool. So as long as the assignments are finished by their due date, then students are on task. If they finish before the week is over and no new assignments are posted, then the rest of their time is theirs. They'll also see the learning intentions for the activities that we do in this class. And then if there's any extra credit available, that will be listed at the bottom. So again, this is our home screen. I also wanted to show you the modules. Oh, let me leave student view really quickly. The modules are, for example, if I look at my learning code, you'll see that the student has to mark that activity as done to be able to move on to the next one. This assignment here, they had to submit it to be able to move on. And then the remaining assignments, they have to receive a certain score before they can move on to the next one. So that's how it works in my class in terms of being able to work at your own pace. Okay. All of that said, let's return back to our home page, and I do want to show you the documents module. And these are the important documents for our class. I'm going to go ahead and put this back into student view. So we have a Meet the Teacher document, just in case there was more about me that you wanted to learn. You can find that on this PDF here. Okay. If you want to know a little bit more about the class, we have the class syllabus. So it explains to you what we'll be doing in this class. It is a robotics prerequisite. So you have to take this class before you can take robotics next year. Explains a little bit more about the classwork and the consequences. We have the champs, which are my rules and expectations for my class and for the computer lab once we get ourselves into there, if this will load at all. And because it's not loading, I'm going to move on. Underneath that, we have the presentation that I gave to the students where I covered all of the rules and expectations and procedures for this computer science class. Okay, so these are things that can be found within our class documents module, which is again on the home screen if you were to return to that. Okay, now if I've brought something up that you want to ask me about, if any questions came up that maybe I didn't answer as the presentation was moving along, if you move to the last page of this slideshow, you'll see that there is a parking lot form. So if you click on that parking lot form, it's going to open up into a form as you see here. If you have any, again, questions, comments, or concerns, anything that might have not been addressed in this presentation, if you could put your student's last name and your student's first name. They are in my period 6 computer science class. If you would like me to call you by a certain name or address you in a certain way, please write that here. Okay. What language are you most comfortable speaking? If I need to have a translator, I want to make sure that one is available to you. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, this would be the opportunity to write them here so that I can respond to you in a timely way. I have different options if you can let me know which one works best for you and then answer the rest of the questions accordingly. Once you submit that form, so once you click on the submit button at the bottom here, you'll see that there's a screen that looks just like this one here. And on that screen is the Zoom link. And currently during back to school night, I am sitting on that Zoom. So if you need to speak to me about something immediately, then you can go ahead and click on that Zoom and I will be there to help you work through whatever questions you might have. You do need to log into the Zoom with your student's email. It is only accepting lbschools.net addresses. So please make sure your student helps you with logging into Zoom so that you can speak with me if you need to. So hopefully that addressed all of your questions and concerns. And if not, please use that parking lot form and I'll be happy to get back to you as soon as possible. Other than that, have a great evening. Thank you so much for stopping by.